Welcome to lesson 11 of learning New Testament Greek. Today we continue through the first chapter of John's Gospel, and we'll be looking at verses 8 and 9. So here it is, John chapter 1 verse 8. Uk ein ekenos tophos al hina marturese peri tu photos. It's talking about John the Baptist, and I've printed this out on landscape to give a bit more room to write the different parts of our translation underneath. So you might like to prepare your paper and do your own work before I show what I've done. But here it is, what I've done. First, the letter by letter translation. Uk ein ekenos tophos al hina marturese peri tu photos. So there are some new words here. The first new word is uk. The second new word is ekenos, and the third new word is al. So you can try and write your translation if you like before I do, and write down these new words if you know them, or if you want to make a guess. But here they are, down here. Not. Uk means not. Was, that. So ekenos means that, and the ending tells us that it's masculine singular, so I've written that man. Not was that man the light, and al means but. The little apostrophe here tells us that a letter is missed off, and the letter is actually a, so that this word in full is Allah. But because the next word begins with a vowel, the a drops off here, and we put this little apostrophe to indicate the dropped off letter. So al, this looks like the English word all, but we'll pronounce it al. And then it carries on to say hina marturese peri tu photos, which is exactly as we had in the previous verse. In order to witness about the light. So finally, our proper translation. He was not the light, and I've made that into a capital L, but he came in order to witness about the light. So again, there are different possibilities for this translation. That man, so you could say that man, but I've simply put he. He was not the light, this is John the Baptist, but he came in order to bear witness to the light, to witness about the light. And notice that the Greek missed out the he came, which I've inserted here, just to make it run properly in English and make it clear. The Greek simply says, not was that one the light, but in order to testify about the light. It doesn't have the he came, which I've added in my translation here just to make it clearer. It's interesting to note how John is referred to. When he was first introduced in verse 6, we had his name. Then in verse 7, he was referred to as hutos. And then in verse 8, now he's referred to as ekenos. So the first approximation, translation of hutos is this, and of ekenos is that, but those words don't work here in English. We could say that person, or we could say, in English perhaps, we might even say this person was not the light. But I've just simplified it, and I've just said he was not the light. So it's an interesting question that this word ekenos is used here. It seems to be a little bit emphatic, And it raises a question, were some people claiming that John was the light? Which would lead the Gospel writer John to say, Uk ein ekenos tophos. That one was not the light. So possibly some people, he wrote this because some people were claiming, but perhaps more likely just John wants to contrast the ministries of John and Jesus. So there we have it, the first part of the verse, and I'll just leave that there, and we come to the second part. Well, it's actually verse 9. Ein tophos to alithinon hophotitze panta anthropon erchomenon es ton kosmon. This looks like a capital H, is actually the capital letter of the long E as we have here. This is the small version of it, and this is the capital letter of it, and it looks exactly like the English H. And in fact, in other dialects of Greek, it was used to represent the H sound. So here we write down letter by letter. Ein tophos to alethinon hophotidze panta anthropon erchomenon es ton kosmon. So now coming to our word by word translation. Again, if you want to do it before you see mine, you can do that. I'm about to show mine now. And here it is. Was the light the true, which lightens every man or all man coming into the world. So we have a couple of new words here, I think. Well, alethinon we met in John chapter 15 verse 1, ego eimi he ampelos he alethine, I am the true vine. We met it there with just with a different ending. Here we have this is a neuter ending agreeing with phos, which is a neuter noun in Greek. Ein tophos to alethinon ha photidze. Well, firstly, this word ha, it looks like our word for the, but in fact it's not. And this little mark here tells us it's different, and it's actually not the, but which or who. There's no difference in the pronunciation, but just this little mark here, which perhaps originally in classical Greek meant a difference in pronunciation, but not by the time of New Testament Greek. No difference in pronunciation, but the mark is preserved. So it is actually a different word to ha, meaning the, which we've met, but here it means which, and grammatically it's called the relative pronoun. Okay, hophotidze. Now, this word here, you can see it's similar to phos, but it's taken on a different ending. And this idze ending is very common in Greek. It makes a verb from a noun, and it corresponds to be, or make, or do. So, photidze, it has the part that means light, and then this part which means make or do. So you could say which makes light or does light. So I've written lighten, not in the sense of light not heavy, but in the sense of lighten, in the sense of make light. and then we come to panta, which yes, we've met before. That's all or every, and it has a different ending on it, which indicates the object of the sentence. What is lightened? And the answer is every man. Anthropos, we met, but with this N ending indicates that it's the object, and this panta agrees with it, although it happens to take a different ending because there's not one standard ending to indicate the object in Greek. Unfortunately, if you want complete regularity like that, you have to go to an artificial language like Esperanto. Unfortunately, real languages do things in different ways and have irregularities. So these two words are actually in agreement, and they're working together as the object of the sentence. They are what is lightened, or enlightened, if you like. Panta anthropon, all or every man. And here's a new word, erkomenon, which means coming. Coming, and the on ending is agreeing with the, no, not with the anthropon, but it's agreeing with the phos back here. In this case, the on ending is not telling us the object, but it's telling us that it's a neuter noun. So this on is agreeing with this on, which is agreeing with the neuter noun phos. So there are a few grammatical complications here. Yes, we met elthen in verse 7. That's a different form of come. It looks quite different to this one. It does happen in English that the past form of a verb is very different from the present form. Think of is, was, or are, were, or can and could. I can swim, I could swim when I was younger. So can is the present and could is the past form of it. Looks quite different, but it's really the same verb. So the same thing here. Erkomenon is the present form, and it looks very different to the past form elthen, which we met in verse 7. Eis also we met in verse 7, where it said hutos elthen eis marturian. In that case we translated it as for. He came for a witness, or to testify. But here the eis has more of its primary meaning, its first approximation meaning, which means motion towards. So the light is coming towards the world. And this ending here is often associated with the object, but in this case we have it because of the eis. I'll talk more in a minute about some of those grammatical details. But first, our proper translation, which I've written like this. Again, there's more than one option. You can choose different ways of how you want to write this, but I've written the true light, which gives light to everyone, was coming into the world. So we'll just fold this up again for a minute, and I'll show you a very handy resource here, which very neatly summarizes these grammatical problems, and this is it. You can find grammar books that explain these things in many pages, and in the back of most Greek grammars you'll find pages and pages too, but this is very convenient because it's a laminated sheet, and it's just all in the one sheet like that, and it's a very handy reference that you can quickly look up to find what you need to know. And it's called Biblical Greek by William D. Mounce, and it's a Zondervan study guide. I bought this from my local Christian bookshop where you could order it, or I'm sure you could get it online from Zondervan. So let's just have a look at some of these points here that we were discussing, these grammatical points. Here we have the, well, first of all, above here, here's the complete Greek alphabet, which is useful to have. We haven't met every letter yet. I think we haven't met these two here. But yeah, they are neatly summarized for you, all put together. And the definite article, the, here are all the different forms of it. We've met most of them, but not all of them yet, I think. So unfortunately, I've been trying to avoid grammatical terminology in this course, but in order to read a summary like this, you need to know a certain amount of grammar. So the word the is called the definite article, and these are the different parts of it. Nom sing, that stands for nominative, singular. So the nominative is usually what indicates the subject. And then you have masculine, feminine, and neuter. These are the three genders in Greek grammar. Nominative singular, next is gen singular, that's short for genitive singular, and that usually indicates possession, so of the man, anthropou, of the man, but it has other functions as well. Dat singular, that's dative singular, that usually means two or four. And then finally is the ACC singular, that's accusative singular, so that usually means the object of the sentence, but it has other functions as well. So I think we've met most of these, and down here are all the plural ones. But remember I said here that this one is the relative pronoun, not the article, not the definite article, but the relative pronoun. So it doesn't mean the, but it means which. So here it is conveniently put together in this chart, the definite article and the relative pronoun, which is very similar to it in forms, as you see, but there are some differences. So this one here comes from here. It's the well, here as well, the neuter nominative singular. So that means it's the subject of the sentence, it's singular, and it's going with a neuter subject. So the word phos is neuter. You see, it's ta phos, so that the phos takes the neuter form of the definite article, the neuter form of the word the. So it's ta phos, and the article is repeated with the adjective which agrees with it. So it's ta phos, and then to refer to the phos, the form of the relative pronoun, the word which, that we take is the neuter singular. And so here it is here. You can see it, and it has the little dash here. So this first bit, remember, means bring in an H. That apostrophe means bring in an H, so it's ha. And this little mark here, again, as I said, makes no difference in the pronunciation, but it does make a difference in the meaning. It indicates that it's the article. And you see here that little dash goes downwards, and here the little dash, if you can see it, it goes upwards. But that just varies with position in the sentence, so we needn't worry about the distinction between the downward going mark and the upward going mark. What other grammatical points can we look up here? You can see quite a few of them. Perhaps we could just look at these little words called prepositions. Again, we've met most of them. Here's pros, which, as I said, the main meaning of that is to. So it's indicated with this little arrow.
indicating that pros means going to, and here's eis, which means to or into. So here we had eis coming to, towards, or into. Into is perhaps a better translation, coming into the world. So here it's indicated coming into the world. What else have we met? Yeah, we met dia in the previous lesson, which means through, and it goes, this tells you that it goes with a genitive noun. And we also met peri in the sense of round or about, and I think we also met para in the sense of, here it is, in the sense of alongside. I think we said that John came para through from God. You could say from alongside God. This is para with the accusative, but in that case we had para with genitive, because it's a secondary meaning of the genitive to indicate motion away from something. So here we are. We'll be referring to this again, and it's a very convenient summary of these grammatical points, like I say, in one convenient little laminated chart that we have here. But at the end of the day, we put that away and we just look at the Greek. That's the important thing. Here are our two verses talking about John and his ministry. Uk ein ekenos tophos al hina marturese peri tu photos. That was John's job, to testify about the light. Ein tophos to alithinon hophotidze panta anthropon erchomenon eis ton cosmon. The true light, which gives light to every person, was coming into the world, and that's the message of John's Gospel. And what a wonderful message it is for us all who live in the cosmos, in the world.